is a plain Jane open-faced omelet, but she needs a bit of makeup. Just scumble on some green peppers and red tomatoes, and she turns into Miss Piperade from the Basque Country. We're having piperade for lunch today on the French Chef.
The French Chef is made possible by a grant from Hills Brothers Coffee Incorporated and by a grant from the Polaroid Corporation.
You know, I rather like having people for lunch if I don't have to make a really elaborate one, as long as it's a good lunch. And this one is not going to be a fancy one. It's just going to have 2 courses. And the main course is an omelette piperade. It's an open-faced omelet from the Basque Country, and a delicious and easy one. And then we're having a lovely strawberry dessert, which is going to be put in these little cups that are made out of cookie dough, and they're just delicious. And these cups are, well, there's 1 cup there, and they're just baked like a regular cookie. They're baked flat on a buttered and floured plaque. This has butter and then a light coating of flour so that things won't stick on it. And the dough is very simple to make. I'm going to clear the decks a little bit so I'll have plenty of room here. And the dough starts out with 1/2 stick. That's just 2 ounces of soft, ordinary butter. And then 1/3 cup of ordinary granulated sugar. Or you can use that very finely granulated sugar if you want. And then just mix it all up until it turns into a pomade. A pomade just means fluffily beaten butter and sugar. And if you can beat it in the mixer if you want, but I don't think it's necessary. And if you find that you have to take your butter right out of the icebox, and it's hard, you can heat the bowl and beat it, and then if it's too liquid, beat it over cold water. It should be a mixture like that, you know, sort of nice and soft. And then you want to have 1/4 cup of egg whites, and be sure that's no more than 1/4 cup. I have slightly more, so I'm going to not put quite all of it in. Because if you have more, you'll find that your mixture won't be quite the way it should be. And then this is just beaten in. I'll at this stage use a wire whip. You just want to beat it until it's thoroughly mixed. And there'll usually be a little, it's really not so thoroughly mixed. You notice there's some slightly little granular things in it, but they're soft. But that's all the more that you want to beat it, because you don't want to deflate it too much. There's a little bit more that was left on my spoon. And then you want to flavor it up. You can use 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla, or you can grate in some orange or lemon rind. I'm going to put some lemon rind in because I think that's good with strawberries. Already smells good enough to eat. And then it has some ordinary all-purpose flour in it. And for that you want 1/3 cup. And with this you just dip the 1/3 cup into your flour container and then level it off. This is just ordinary all-purpose flour. And then put it into a sifter in case there might be any lumps in it. And then just gradually sift that in. You don't want to beat this too thoroughly because you want the batter to have some sort of a consistency, and you'll see why when we spread it out. So that's just sort of just barely mixed. Somebody said you shouldn't beat the bowl with a beater, but I'm not going whack on the bowl. I guess that was because in old-fashioned bowls that they cracked when you beat them, but this is a good solid glass one. And now that's all there is to the cookie batter, and this is what the cookie is like. You see, it's just a lovely little cup. And it's nice and crisp. I'm just going to break off a piece of it. It's lovely and crisp, and you can make these ahead of time and put them in the freezer. And this batter, you can make all kinds of cookies with perfectly flat, little small round cookies, or you can make a long shape that looks like a tongue, and that's called a cat's tongue in France, or a langue de chat. So this cookie batter is used for all kinds of things. And in this instance, we're going to do it, make some large flat rounds about 5.5 inches. And you want to draw around any kind of a round object. I thought you might enjoy seeing these French things that are called vol au vent cutters. You see they have a little hole in it, and it's raised up so that you can put your finger in, so it's very easy to move it from place to place. And this one is to be 5.5 inches, and this is a whole nest. Now that one is 6 inches, so I want one that's 5.5. That's a number 4 cutter. I haven't seen these around in this country, but if you go over to France, if you go to any store, you can usually find them. And now this, with the flour coating, you want to mark the circles on it, and this is going to guide you for making your cookies. And I'm just marking around with my ruler. Be sure that you have a cookie sheet that's large enough to take about 4 of these cookies. And we have 4 lines. Almost, I'm not a great cookie maker myself, but I find when something is simple like this to do, I don't object to them so much. And also when it's going to turn out to be a pretty cup like this, which is good to eat. And now you have your 4 marks, so you put 4 blobs of cookie dough on each. You see, you don't want this batter to be so loose that it's going to spread out too much. That's about a good tablespoon, and then spread it out with the back of the spoon, and this wants to be about 1/8 of an inch thick. And this amount of batter will make 8 5.5 inch cookies like this. You can see how useful it is to have those guidelines, because then you can make them quite evenly. If you've ever done those cookies that are called tuiles or tiles, they're the kind that you bake very thin and then form them around a rolling pin. You do exactly like this with them, or then they're lacy cookies with nuts in them. You can use this same batter and put almonds in it. I need a little more of my batter there. I'm only going to make 3 of these, but I just want to give you the idea. I could make just 2, but I want to make 3 just in case something happens to one of them, because you never know. And with these, you can only bake 4 at a time, because you have to form them while they're still warm. But with this batter, nothing will happen to it if you just let it sit for a certain amount of time. Or you can make it days ahead and put it in the refrigerator and let it come up to room temperature and make some more cookies. I'll repeat those proportions. 1/2 stick softened butter, 1/3 cup sugar, 1/4 cup egg whites, and then the grated rind of 1 lemon, and 1/3 cup of all-purpose flour. Now, those are all ready to be baked. And these go into a preheated 425-degree oven. And they only bake about 4 or 5 minutes. And then be sure and set your timer. I'm going to set it for 4 minutes, because they might only take 4 minutes to bake, and they burn up very quickly. And now, while those are baking, I'll just have time to do the strawberry dessert. And this is I'm using 2 quarts of fresh strawberries, which I'm going to put through a sieve. You could use, and this is going to be turned into a sherbet. You could use frozen strawberries for this perfectly well. You just let the frozen strawberries thaw out and drain, and then just use the pulp. You want about, gosh, I can't remember how many cups of pulp that makes. It's about 2.5 to 3 cups of pulp. And then they've all been sieved through, and it has a delicious smell, and then they just have to be sweetened up. And you want to put instant sugar in them because you want the sugar to dissolve very quickly, and put in about 1 cup to 1.25 cups. It depends on how sweet the strawberries are. And you want to stir it around until the sugar is completely melted. And that's why the instant sugar is so useful. If you just look on your grocery shelf very carefully, you'll find this instant very finely ground, which is also good for iced tea. You just want to make sure that you've stirred it enough so that all the sugar has melted, and then you put in about 1/4 to 1/3 of a cup of fresh lemon juice. And that's really practically all there is to it, and then taste it and make sure that you have just the right amount of sugar and just the right amount of lemon juice. It's awfully good just the way it is. And then you want to have 2 egg whites in. And these just have to be rather roughly beaten. And the reason you want the egg whites is because they prevent the sugar crystals from hardening too much. See, that's just sort of foamy, and that's all that's necessary. And in that goes into the strawberries. And then beat it up just to thoroughly mix it. And then that, at this point, is all you need to do. And if you're in a terrible hurry to freeze it, you can put it in a flat dish, and in about an hour it will be fairly stiff, and you can beat it up again. And if you aren't in any hurry at all, you just put it in the freezer, and then you have to beat it up once when it's partially frozen, because that will mix the egg whites in and soften it and make it foamy. You'll see I'm going to put it in the freezer now, and then we'll have another bunch of it, which I'll beat up so that you can see what it looks like. But this is, now that we have home freezers, it makes these homemade things so easy to do. And now I'd better get over to those cookies. About almost 4 minutes. And I can look at them now, and they haven't quite done it. They have to brown around the edges and just begin very lightly browning in the center. If they aren't cooked quite enough, you're not going to be able to get them off the cookie sheet. Now, these cups are just perfect to form the cookies in. Be sure to oil them just a little bit so that the cookies will come out properly after you've formed each one. Now, I think these are just about ready. See, they've just begun to brown. And you want to be sure, because they harden very quickly, that you take it off just while it's still soft, and keep the tray at the oven door. Because once they cool off, you've had it. You can't do anything. Now there's our third one. I'll form this one in an oiled plastic jar. Then if you have a fourth, by the time you've really put the first 2 in, it's stiffened up enough so it holds its shape. And this is the kind of a thing that you'll develop your own system for. And I think I'd better put that one back in again. Now, this is a particularly nice form, but as soon as it's just cool enough to handle, you can take them out. So I don't really think it's necessary to have more than 2 cups ready, but you can do as you feel. And now, when we're ready to get to the main course, which is going to be a piperade. And a piperade is a mixture that is sort of typical of Basque country cooking. And it's a very simple mixture, which is onions and peppers and tomatoes, all cooked together, but cooked in such a way that they retain their shape. See, those are the tomatoes, and they still are in slices. And this is a kind of mixture that you can cook way ahead of time, and you can even freeze it, and it's very simple to do. So we will start out. You start out with the onions, and this is usually cooked in olive oil. You can use cooking oil, you can use butter if you like. You want about 2 tablespoons. I'm going to make enough for 4 to 6 people. So I have 2 tablespoons of oil, and then you want about 2 cups of sliced onions. And this again is one of those nice recipes where the ingredients don't make a great deal of difference. I mean the exact proportions, and these mix around in the oil and then put a cover on and let them cook for about 5 minutes till they're almost tender, and then have about 1.5 cups to 2 cups of sliced green peppers and mix them around in the oil because they take less time to cook, and cover the pan for about 5 minutes, and then you're ready to add a bit of garlic. And you never want to overcook garlic because it seems to get bitter and it burns easily. Then the garlic goes in, and then you're ready to put in the tomato mixture. And in this is tomato pulp that has been cut into slices like this. This is our same old friend, the tomato concassé, but it's cut into slices rather than into sort of pulp. You have a peeled tomato and cut across it, not through the stem end, and then squeeze out the juice, and then simply cut it into slices like that. These are not the ripest tomatoes I've ever seen, so that the inside doesn't come out terribly well, but at least you have the slices. And then, after your peppers and your onions are soft, you put the tomatoes right in. And then you want to have some salt and pepper and basil. That's probably about a quarter of a teaspoon of salt. And then some nice basil. If you have fresh chopped basil, that would be even better, and some freshly ground pepper. And then the tomatoes you want to cook covered for about 5 minutes, so they will surely render their juice. And then after they've cooked for 5 minutes and you see the juices in the pan, take the cover off and then let it cook over moderately high heat until the juices have evaporated. And you end up with a nice mixture like this. See, there they are. The slices have all stayed together, and it's a pretty green, white, and red. And then add 2 or 3 tablespoons of parsley and mix that up very delicately, and you're all ready. And this you can cook ahead as long as you want, and you can even freeze this mixture, but put the parsley in afterwards because plain parsley would not freeze very well. And now we are ready to make the omelet. And this is very fast to do. This is, of course, has to be at the very last moment. And I'm going to make an 8-egg omelet, which will be for 4 to 6 people. You can even, of course, break the eggs and beat them up ahead of time. Now here's how you do this fancy job of the eggs. You just give it a sharp crack on the bowl, and then see with your lower and your upper fingers, you pull the shell wide open. But you have to give it a nice sharp crack. Once in a while you get some shell bits in. I still do, though. But it's such fun. Now about 1/4 teaspoon of salt and some pepper. And then just before you make your omelets, you want to heat your pan, and this you can cook with olive oil or butter. I think olive oil is a little more basky. But be sure that you have a very good brand. I like French olive oil, and that's a question of just looking around and buying a small bottle and tasting it until you get one that you like. And then the eggs are just beaten up until they're just mixed. And I never put anything in with them. Just salt and pepper. And I have about a good tablespoon of oil in there. And then in it goes. Actually, this omelet, rather than being an actual omelet, is really sort of a scrambled egg business. And you can, it's very easy because you cook it and serve it in the same pan. I've got a French copper one, which looks nice on the table. You could use a fancy skillet. And I've got the heat on very high, and I'm just stirring it around. And it doesn't have to be unmolded, so it doesn't make any difference whether it sticks to the bottom. I had this for the first time in a little restaurant on the left bank in Paris, opposite the Notre Dame Cathedral. And it was supposed to be, oh, such a great specialty and so forth and so on. I didn't realize at that time, in my innocence, how terribly easy it was to make. This, I really think, has to be done at the last minute if the eggs are going to taste properly. You can do it ahead and slightly undercook it and then keep it in a pan of just warm water. But remember that eggs coagulate at a temperature of 100 and, what is it, something like 160. And you don't want to overcook it. This isn't cooked as heavily as regular scrambled. I mean, this is more like French scrambled eggs, which is a soft scramble. And then with a heavy pan like this, I'm also going to undercook it before I take it off, because it will keep on cooking in the pan. So the top is still soft, and I'm taking it off, and then I'm going to scumble in the piperade mixture. You want the top to be slightly soft so that you can get the piperade mixture slightly worked into the eggs. And then, if you like to make an even heartier meal, you can put some pieces of sautéed ham on top of it. That's really a very nice little meal. Now this, ideally, you should serve immediately, but I've got such a heavy pan, I'm going to leave it for just a moment, and I'm going to finish up my dessert. Now you've had the strawberry mix in the freezer, but mine was so frozen because I wanted you to see how it was beaten up, that I put it in the refrigerator, and I hope it's soft enough so that I can show you how it beats. Now this was just like that plain mixture we just made with just the egg whites in. And see, after it's gotten so that it's quite frozen, then you take a big wire whip and you just beat it. And watch how it begins to turn pale. And this is also important because it breaks up the sugar crystals. I seem to be getting it all over the cooktop. Then you beat it up like that and then just put it back in the freezer again. And that you could beat it twice if you wanted to. Just depended on how much time you had. And then if you didn't care how fat you got, you could beat in some cream into it, and then it would be turned into a proper mousse. Then it goes into your little serving cups. I have a no-stick ice cream scoop, which I'm using for the first time, and it really seems to work. And I think these should really be filled just at the last minute so that the cookies keep their lovely crispness. I'll have to put a little bit more in that one. And then decorate the top of each with a fresh, beautiful red strawberry. You could put the mousse in the cookie cups and then freeze them, but then it would be sort of like one of those frozen ice cream cones that you get, and I don't think it would be quite as good. Now this one is so big it seems a little top heavy. I think I'm going to put a little more ice cream in that to even it out. Well, this no stick scoop works very well. There, that really looks very nice, I think. And now I shall take both the ice cream and the piperade into the dining room so you can see how they look together. And with such a heavy copper pan as this, the piperade is still hot, even though I should serve them immediately. And I'm sort of doing this backwards because I wouldn't not be serving the strawberries until dessert time. I want you to see everything as it'll be. There, and then the piperade you serve just as though it were an omelet or a pie. Everyone gets a nice heaping spoonful of it. Then of course you can't serve a salad that has any tomatoes or anything in like that in it because you already have tomatoes in the piperade. So we're having celery hearts vinaigrette and a nice piece of French bread. So you see that makes a very nice little lunch. And everybody has plenty to eat, but not too much, and it's really not at all fattening. And then when you're through, you have your lovely little mousse de fraises in your cookie cups. Then with the main course, I would serve a rosé wine, and the rosé, of course, wouldn't taste very good with the dessert. It would make the wine seem rather sour. So I think really this is a very good little menu to keep in mind. Mainly because everything can be done ahead and can even be frozen, and then all you have to do is to heat up the piperade and make the omelet. And the omelet only takes you about 3 or 4 minutes. And actually, if you serve this to unexpected company, they'd be so pleased that they'd really think that they'd been especially invited. So that's all for today on The French Chef. This is Julia Child. Bon appétit.
The French Chef has been made possible by a grant from the Polaroid Corporation and by a grant from Hills Brothers Coffee Incorporated. Julia Child is co-author of the book Mastering the Art of French Cooking.